Hey guys, John here. Today we're going to geek out over Avenger 2. So one of the cool things I think is nice about the synthesizer is the visual aspect, right? So a long time ago, I worked with a chef and he told me some interesting piece of advice. He said that people generally dine first with their eyes before they even put the food in their mouth, right? So whenever you go to a nice restaurant and the plate comes to you and you look at that, you say, wow, that looks really good. It also must taste really good as well, right? It's kind of this like psychological bridge that we think about when we're getting food, right? And I applied that as well to synthesizers, which I guess maybe I don't know if that's an easy step to go to, right? But generally, if you there's some synthesizers out there and you load them up, you're like, what on earth is this? How do I even where's a saw wave, right? And it kind of like throws you off. So you're like, okay, if this UI is really bad, this might sound bad, right? That's not always the case, right? So but that's kind of something that we kind of had to work through. So that's one of the first points that I kind of think is cool with Avenger. It's very straightforward. There's sections for everything. It's kind of right in your face, and it's just pretty obvious. If you've never read the manual and you just load it up for the first time, it's not going to take you very long to start feeling comfortable in it, right? So that's definitely a cool point for me. The next one that's really nice is obviously the sound, right? That's what we're going for at the end of the day. It sounds good because you could have the best interface in the world, but if it sounds bad, it's not a good synth at the end of the day, right? So we basically have a saw wave, and it's really easy, right? We want some unison, we just slide up this mix slider. We got some cool stuff like that, right? Where's our filter? It's right up here where it says filter. Pretty obvious where there's the big cutoff knob. And there's a couple things of this synth that I feel like they kind of spoke to me. So one of them being, if we go into the type here and we go to the low pass, all the way down here at the bottom, we have this TBLP18, which is the filter of the TB303. Especially with this resonance, right? So if we enabled an ARP, which is just a click of a button, which is nice, right? We crank up some resonance here and give us some depth here for our envelope. We're going to start to get kind of that sound, right? And we're like, okay, we might need also a square wave. We can load up another oscillator, but what we can also do is we can go to the voicing here and we can say, oh, I want a sub oscillator. Let's go pick a square and start blending that in here. If you think, oh, maybe I need to invert the phase or technically invert the polarity, but that's a conversation for another time. We have an invert button right here. Now, it's cool it's there. You're probably not always going to use it, but if you find yourself in a bind, that's nice that it's there because it's going to save your day. Which is kind of nice there. Right, so what's the thing that we would probably add next, right? It's probably going to be distortion maybe because we want to kind of distort the crap out of this thing. So what's really nice, we have this routing panel and we say, okay, we have this oscillator and we're like, okay, we're doing the ARP thing. We have this pitch here, which we might get to that at some point in the video maybe. And then we're going to a filter, right? So we want to, have some distortion. We want to shape the wave. So we have a shaper section, which is really nice. So we just hit a plus and we're like, okay, let's click shaper. And where do we want this in the chain? Where is it even? If we right click, kaboom, it's right there. It's just easy to use. So we have the shaper here and we can just click and drag this beneath the filter if we'd like to. So we're processing it through the filter and then we're going into the shaper. Then we're cranking this here. Kind of getting some of that nastiness. And what's cool, so we have two gain frequencies right over here. So this is kind of default right here. We see this kind of peak, but we can move this around. So it's pretty cool. So let's say, for example, we want to modulate that with what we're doing with our filter. We can drag and drop this here to this frequency, give it some depth to this little flag. And we're kind of already doing that right there. Kind of nice. What we can do as well, so if we go to our amp section, there's a couple cool things that we could talk about. So here, for example, I see this decay and I'm like, okay, here we have a linear line right here. So that's cool for some things, but let's say we want some curves, right? We just have to right click and then we can adjust these curves, which is really nice. We can get a steep curve and then also we just adjust the decay time to what we like. Which is really nice. And what's nice as well, so we have our first oscillator, which we're just using one for now. We can do a lot of crazy stuff with effects, right? So this patch generally for acid stuff, right? You're gonna have some distortion, some delays, and some reverbs. And for the most part, the rest happens in the sequencer, right? So we have this kind of going. So let's say we want some reverb. We just click our reverb send here, which if we don't know where that is, again, remember, we can right click, kaboom, we have our send. Then we have our reverb. And then if, let's say we also want some delay, so I have this set up as well. We just click here, and we have our send volumes or send sliders right over here. So that's kind of cool. So we're going to an ARP, so let's check this out here. So we have an ARP. It's kind of going through here, so we can kind of like remove some of these. Play some drums behind it. Go to our song mode. Okay, so that's cool. So let's say, like, for now, I'm just kind of like, okay, I feel like I want to compress this a little bit to kind of bring this up. So we can go to our master effects, and you can see down over here, we basically are going to be adding a compressor to the master, right? So to the end of the whole thing. So we can click here or right click here, and then we can go to our compressor section, the dynamics, hit our compressor, and start bringing the slider down. And what's cool with that distortion thing, we're almost kind of getting a little bit of a formant here. So we're kind of taking the inspiration of a 303 and just adding our own kind of flavor to it. So now let's say we like this distortion, let's add a little bit more of this distortion. So what we could do, for example, we can go to this plus here and we can say, or I think we already have it here, yeah, out effects 1. So we're going out to our first effects bank, so let's go to our first effects, and what we can do, we can right click, find our distortion, and just click this first distortion or whatever that was in the list. What is it, 4? Yeah, there we go, 4. So let's bring this back up here, and it sounds actually pretty good out of the box. It's just nasty, it's a little bit much, so we can always bring down these sliders. So let's say maybe we want some slides or something like that. So let's go to our pitch and maybe let's go to mono legato. And maybe we can bring this up like that. Or actually what we could do, let's try going back to our pitch. Let's try to go to polyportament. Let's see what happens here. So that's pretty cool as well. So let's say, for example, we don't have our drums. We could even go in here to a drum oscillator, which is actually really interesting. So we go to our drum kit, and let's say we go to factory 1, and let's say, I guess, analog 1. We have a whole drum kit here. So we can go down to our mixer and bring down our drums because it's a little bit loud for this patch. So this might be a little bit much. Let's go to our drum sequencer. Let's clear this out. So we have a kick here. We can just put these on each one like that. Something kind of simple for now. Let's close, right click that, and put these kind of on the grid. Maybe we want to add some percussion or some hats in here, something kind of like that. So move this over here like that, and then kind of just start adding these like that. Maybe add some snares in there. So maybe we can switch out to some different drums. So let's take off our lock. Let's go to different drum kits. Scroll down, maybe some disco house. But yeah, that's just some of the fun as far as the acid stuff. For some reason, I always kind of go to acid stuff. So, for example, let's go to some of this art I've been kind of working on. Almost all of this is acid, which is kind of funny because I just kind of gravitate to making that. I don't know why that is. There's something about synthesizers where you just kind of use this for making that. And I always thought that was kind of funny. They're like, I use X synth to make X type of sounds, which is kind of funny, right? Because you can really make a lot of different sounds. But for some reason, I don't know why, I just kind of get some interesting acid stuff. So here's some of those. Yeah, that one's kind of nasty. We got Acid Bounce, which I forget what this one was. Oh yeah, let's kind of bring that down. It's a little bit loud here. Then we have Acid 2, which one is kind of, I think, one of my favorites, right? Let's play a little bit higher here. And let's see what would kind of happen if we loaded up some of the drums here. So let's say we go to, for example, what's dubstep 7. Let's go to our drum sequencer. Let's turn that down here. So let's go to our mixer and bring down our drums. That's interesting. So what do we got here? It's funny because, like, really, we're just pressing one key on the keyboard and we have this. Oh, but wait, we didn't trigger our drums. So why is that? So if you go to our zones, we just trigger our drum zones over here and we're back in business. Yeah, so that's a lot of fun in that sense. So what else do we have here? So we have Acid Dirt. I think it's kind of the same thing, but just slightly different there. Crazy Voices. I forgot about what this one is. Oh, yes. And it's a lot of fun to make patches in the synthesizer. There's some synths out there where it's kind of a pain to use, and it takes a long time to kind of really get where you're going, even though you can do a lot of things. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. And for some reason, this is kind of crazy. I actually wrote something in a major key, and it was an ARP, and it's kind of weird, but I was like, I kind of like this for some weird reason, but here we go. Kind of gives us hope through these dark times. Yeah, and then if you're probably wondering this one here, so I call this one Smooth and Hairless because that's just the first thing that popped in my mind. Please don't judge me. Here we go. But we have some distortion macros here that we can actually add some hair to this thing. But yeah, so that's some cool stuff right there. Also, there's some interesting patches here because, okay, so this is kind of an interesting topic, right? So, you know how people say don't judge a book by its cover, right? And they, you know, that kind of, I think, extends to don't judge a synth by its presets, whether that's good or whether that's bad, right? But a lot of these patches in here are pretty mind-blowing. Like, I kind of stop and like, yes, it sounds really cool, but I'm kind of just looking at how it's all routed and done, and it's pretty impressive, I gotta say. So one of those, if I actually favorited a couple of these. So if we go back, I think it's in the factory. No, it might have been this. This might be one of them. So that was kind of one that I thought was kind of cool as well. I think it is in the, oh no, you know what? I think it was in the generative actually. And that was, where are we? I think it was, I can't even remember where it was. My goodness. I'm pretty sure I favorited it that way. Let's see if we can go to search here. Okay, so we have the Art Black Belt. That one's kind of cool as well. Where are we here? You know, we can just go favorites only and see if we can. Okay, this one, I think it is. Yes. Okay. Okay, by the way, this is just one note getting pressed here. And take a look real quick. So we have all these different oscillators. We have pads, pad 2, pluck 2, bass 2, lead. It's just kind of mind-blowing, right? And then we go to, we have a drum sequence with all this stuff going on. So here we go. So I probably played this for like, oh man, it's kind of embarrassing. Probably a couple hours. I was like, this is amazing. What you can do with one note, or I guess I'm playing one note with my left hand and then kind of doing a lead on the right hand side. But yeah, long story short, that one is really cool. Another one that I found is pretty awesome is this sequence up and down. It's kind of in the similar category, right? Just kind of an intense patch that you can play with one or two fingers. So let's just look at it for one note. So this is going to be just right here. So the programming can go quite in depth as well. So that's just some of these cool presets that I found that I kind of wanted to share with you. There's a lot to go through, to be honest with you. So a couple things before we wrap this video up that I really liked about Avenger 2 is, for example, so one thing that I always do in Hive, right? So I generally take the alternate modifier and put that on the pan and give it some depth, right? So every note that we hit, the note either lands to the left of the speaker and then to the right of the speaker, and it kind of alternates back and forth, right? Kind of gives us a little bit more depth, right? So what's kind of nice is this is basically already kind of done for us, right? So this spread knob, if we turn this right, the modulation's done. I'm like, good Lord. Like that's always a step that I have to do in almost every synth that I have to do that. Sometimes you have to make an LFO that's basically a square and then map that to the pan and kind of just do it that way, which is really cool. And then, but wait, there's more, right? So if you turn this to the left, it's random. So it's kind of a random parameter, random modulator that's on the panning here. Give it a good amount here like that. And all these notes that I press, it's just a random spot where it goes. And then speaking of randomness, right, because sometimes I think we're always trying to add some randomness to make things sound a little bit more analog. So what we could do, if we go back to our VSaw over here and give us some unison, something kind of like this here. Actually reduce this just a little bit. So we have our level, right, transpose, fine-tuning, pretty standard stuff. However, if we right-click on this fine-tuning and increase this, we have a random pitch every time we play a note, kind of like how we did over here with spread if we did alternate. But yeah, pretty nice. We can even have up to 8 oscillators, which is way overkill. I don't even think I've gotten up to 8 yet, but if you want to, the opportunity is absolutely there. And keep in mind, if you go to these voicings and then we have a sub oscillator at a square, kaboom, you don't even have to burn up another oscillator for that. That sounds nasty. So that's pretty cool as well. And one thing, let's go back to an init preset here. So this is kind of it's definitely won me over in the sense that we have so much we can do with our effects, right? So as you saw before, we have our first oscillator, we have a saw wave. So right now we're going to out FX1. So if we go over here, anything that we put on this rack, right? So all these slots here, anything that we put there is going to be processed. And this is going to our master effects, which is yet again another stack, right? So what we could also do is, let's say we have this stack of whatever sound that we like, and we want to add another FX stack. We hit this plus, and then we have another one. So we could really go to FX1, the output, we can send that to FX2, which processes top down, and then it goes to FX2 and goes all through this. And then let's say we want a third one, we click the third one, and then we go, now from here we go to, so we're on FX2, and then from here we go to FX3, and then we go to FX3, so we add another one, and then we can go out to FX4, which is this guy. And then this guy's going to Master Effects. So we can process through FX1, then FX2, FX3, FX4, and then FX5, technically, which is going to be our master. But wait, there's still more. Then we have a send rack, which we can send stuff down over here. So it's insane how many different effects you can stack and send different oscillators to different effects stacks and all that. It's pretty in-depth, right? And that kind of concept for these tabs kind of goes for other things too, right? If we want different amp envelopes, we can keep adding these right here. Different filters, we keep adding them here as well, or different shapers. So it's one of those things where, like, you look at the synthesizer and it's very easy to get a hold of or like grasp, right? And the more in depth that you want to go, it's like, okay, if you want to go a little bit further past these doors, you absolutely can do that. So that's really nice in that sense. And also, a lot of the effects are actually sounding really good as well, because it is possible to have bad sounding effects, right? A lot of these are really nice. So if, here in the send effects here, this AA reverb, which I already kind of have mapped here on the send for this oscillator, it's turned off right now. But if you turn this on, let's give it a little bit more here. And something I like doing as well is seeing how fast I can make kind of almost an analog patch, right? So generally we can do like a saw, a little bit of a square, something kind of like that. So if we have a saw wave here, maybe give a little bit of unison, maybe a little bit of detune, a little bit more unison. And I kind of maybe would like to do a sub saw. So what we could do as well, let's turn on our saw as well, turn this guy on. And we could even keep this the same octave, let's go +1, so it's the same as our main oscillator. Let's give us a little bit of release here. I like to curve it down. And we can go down to our low pass and maybe go to a vintage 12 or 24. Give us some envelope. So we have kind of a basic sound here, right? And that's with no effects so far, which is sounding pretty decent. So we can add a little bit of reverb. Maybe a little bit more. And maybe that's a little bit too plucky, so we can increase our attack here. A little bit of curve there. And then we also might like, oh my god, we also might like some delay. And one of the cream de la cremes, right, is going to be, you guessed it, chorus, right? So that's one thing I like to check out on any kind of synthesizer. So we right click here, and this this AA vintage chorus is pretty nice. So if we did something kind of like this here, let's go to our ARP. It's gonna be fun here. So we go to our mode, and maybe we can go to alternate and slow down our tempo a little bit here. And also, this might be a good point to show some of this voicing here, right? So we have these additional, I guess you can call it a quarter, but you can also add some more interesting things. So we have this ARP kind of going on, right? We can also add one that's 12 semitones up, still keeping the same oscillator. Maybe do another one up that's 12 as well, and then kind of bring it towards 12. There we go, something like that. And then we can always do some fine adjustment tuning here and maybe pan this a little bit to the right while the other one's a little bit to the left. And a 24 filter, 24 dB per octave if you want to be exact. So yeah, aside from it being a quick synth to use, it also sounds really good, and it is so deep. It's almost to the level of the depth that you get with Falcon, those types of synthesizers, where it is a playground of a synthesizer. It is just, it goes as far pretty much as you want it to, right? And last thing before we let you go here, because this video is getting a little bit long, so there's a cool thing that I like about synthesizers where the expansion of macros is really nice. So down here at the bottom, for example, we have macro 1, 2, 3, and then we have some buttons, which is kind of really nice if you want to turn things on and off. So what we could do, say we have our cutoff down here and we want to do something maybe with a macro, right? So we drag and drop to our cutoff and we give it some depth, right? Give it a little bit of, let's grab this flag here, something like that. All right, so it's pretty basic, right? And we can double click and call this cutoff, right? And then maybe for macro 2, what I kind of like doing as well is going to the resonance, something kind of like that. So it's an easy control to use. Pretty cool as well. So another thing as well, so we have these three here, and let's say we burn up this third one with maybe, let's check out this drive knob. So we go to this drive and we bring this up, something like that. Give a little bit more depth here. Relabel this resonance, put res, and then put drive for this guy right here. So it's pretty easy to use, right? So now we say, okay, we've burned up these three knobs here. We want a little bit more. We click the plus and we have another 3 here. We can click the plus, we have another 3, and so on and so forth. So that's really nice. So one of the last things I'd probably do with a patch like this here is, you guessed it, probably do some compression and some EQ as well. So let's actually turn on our EQ and take a look at this. And this is also nice as well, that it's good that we're here. So we have this EQ and we can click on the open button, which shows us a much bigger view of that. And it's a live view as well, which is really nice. Maybe you want to bring some of the top end up a little bit, something kind of like here. And maybe cut some mud or something like that. Something right there, and kind of bring down the gain here. And then lastly, we can do some compression, and maybe 1.5 is a little bit too much. Let's go maybe 4:1. And then we can do this one. But yeah, definitely a very cool synth. It is very deep, and it has become one of my favorites. But yeah, that is pretty much all for this video. I think we're getting, oh my God, we're about 30 minutes in. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you had a good time kind of just hanging out, checking out the synthesizer here and looking through some of its features. There's way more to go through of this, and it is very deep. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.